Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GM Toolbox. I'm Joe, and this is your Black Flag Friday update. It is Friday, March 17th, 2023. It is Black Flag Friday, and right on schedule, Kobold Press has given us another update on Project Black Flag. And not just any update, but we actually got Playtest Packet number 2 this week. But before we move on, I know last week I did not do a video, I was out of town, but there was some cool news about Foundry VTT and Project Black Flag. Foundry VTT is going to have Project Black Flag as a game system on their platform, and already it is available for you to download and use the playtests in Foundry VTT. So you can download that now, install it on your Foundry instance, and create characters using the playtest packets that were out. Now, last I looked, it was just playtest packet number 1. Playtest Packet 2 just came out today, so I would assume they're going to add that in the near future, and you'll be able to build characters using that. So make sure you go over to foundryvtt.com, check that out, download it, and give it a shot. As for this week, like I said, we have the new playtest packet, and I want to dive in and take a look at that with you. It is a fairly large packet. It is about 19 pages, so there is a lot to unpack. I'm going to do my best to go through it somewhat quickly, but I do want to cover as much of it as I can and kind of give you my thoughts on it and what changes we're seeing and things like that. So why don't we dive into that and take a look now. All right, so here we are with playtest packet number 2. There's some basic information here about the playtest packet. They do want us to use it in combination with playtest packet number 1. Of course, all this stuff is supposed to be compatible with 5th edition, but they do say here, for the purpose of this playtest, please use the core fantasy role-playing talents published in playtest packet number 1 and this packet, and do not substitute 5e feats for core fantasy role-playing talents. The core fantasy role-playing rules will contain full conversion details to make any 5e feat into a core fantasy role-playing talent, but that is beyond the scope of this packet. So they will give us instructions on how we can convert 5e feats into talents for this system. However, as we go through this packet, you are going to see ways that you can convert certain class abilities and things like that into core fantasy role-playing. So let's dive in and take a look. The first big thing they have in here is luck. So luck is meant to replace inspiration. Basically, it is a fail forward type of thing. So whenever you miss an attack or fail a saving throw or fail a skill check, you get a luck point. You could have up to 5 luck points, and then you use those luck points as just a +1 to a roll of a d20. So if you've got 2 luck points and you roll a saving throw and you roll a 13, before you know the results, you can say, I want to add +2 to that roll and take 2 of your luck points, and now it's a 15. The idea of this is that you use them as often as you can, because you can't hold more than 5. And if you end up getting a 6th, as opposed to nothing happening, you actually reduce it. You roll a d4, and whatever you roll in that d4 is now how many luck points. You can end up losing luck points if you hold on to too many. So they are trying to encourage us to use them. Now, another thing you can do is you can spend 3 luck points and actually re-roll your d20. It's not rolling with advantage. It's you re-roll and you take that new result. So you can choose, if you just roll like a 2, and adding a couple bonus points isn't going to help, you can spend 3 luck points and just re-roll your roll and hope for the best. And if you have 5, you could probably still add, use 3 to do the re-roll and then 2 more to add +2 to that roll. So a lot of ways you can use your luck, and they actually have built in some other stuff that we'll see later on to help augment the luck system as well. So I do like that as a fail forward system. The having too much luck and then having to roll a d4 and then that becomes your new result, I was worried. I'm like, this seems maybe a little clunky. Is this going to work? But they do actually call out right here in this behind the curtain. They say, if possible, make sure to actually give the system a try at your game table before providing playtest feedback. We had several internal playtesters who thought the system looked too clunky and difficult to manage on paper, but found it very fast-paced and easy to use when they actually got a chance to play with it. We're eager to hear if you end up having the same experience we had. The luck system is intended to completely replace 5e's inspiration mechanic. One of our goals with the luck system is to add a fail-forward reward component to minimize the sting of failure, particularly in combat. There is nothing worse than feeling like your turn is wasted due to a string of bad rolls. So I do like that, because it sucks, especially when you're in a bigger group, 5-6 players, and you wait 15 minutes for your turn, and then nothing happens. So if you start to have a string of bad rolls, though it's going to build up and force you to have success at some point, or generally will, right? Statistically, with those bonuses, you should eventually end up having some better luck with your attacks and your abilities and things like that. So it is an interesting system. My first initial thought was, this seems a little clunky. And then I read that, I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot at the table. And as I read more, I think it started to maybe not sound as bad as my initial reaction to it was. So if your reaction is like mine, that seems like a bit much. Let's take their advice and give it a shot at the table before we make judgment on that. Next up is going to be character classes. So we're seeing 2 classes in this play packet. We are seeing fighters and we're seeing wizards. And we're going to have 2 subclasses for each of those in this playtest packet. Only up to level 8 for now, though, which is fine for playtest purposes. So I will go through, I'll show you some of the similarities between their 5e counterparts and the differences and things like that, and how they've made some adjustments, because there is some stuff I really do like. They go through here on leveling, proficiency, hit points, hit dice, proficiencies, all this type of stuff that pretty well. The starting equipment is essentially exactly the same for this fighter. Your feature descriptions, your subclasses. This section basically mirrors 5e, so I'm going to breeze over it and get right into the fighter. So first with the fighter, they give us a quick build. First thing that's different about the fighter is that when we look at the saving throws, it's con and strength or dex, as opposed to just con and strength. So you get to choose between strength and dex for your saving throw proficiency. So that's kind of neat. The equipment was all the same. Everything else was pretty much the same. Your weapon proficiencies, armor proficiencies, all of that. Then we get into our actual features. So the first one here is called Last Stand. So it seems to me that Last Stand replaces Second Wind. So it says here, when you take damage that would reduce your HP to an amount less than half your hit point maximum, rounded down, you can use your reaction to expend 1 or more of your hit dice up to a number equal to your proficiency bonus. Immediately roll any expended hit dice. You gain hit points equal to the total sum of all your hit dice rolled plus your con modifier. Once you use this feature, you must complete a long rest before you use it again. So there's some key differences here from Second Wind. First, you can't just use it whenever you want. It has to be when you are below half your hit points, right? So when you're less than half your hit point maximum. So if you take damage that would reduce your HP to an amount less than half your hit point maximum, you can do this. Now, if you're already below half your hit point maximum and you haven't used it and then you take more damage, can you still use it? Or is it only that one instance when you first drop below half? I think they need to clarify that. As a game master, I would rule that as long as you're below half your hit points and you take damage, you can use it at any point. It's also going to be here that you're actually using hit dice. It's not just 1d10 plus your level hit points. You're burning hit dice to do it. And you can burn as many hit dice as you want to do it. So in that sense, you can actually get more hit points back from it. But it's, later on when you take a short rest, you won't have those hit dice. So it's pulling from that same pool as opposed to a different pool. It is also completes on a long rest, where I believe Second Wind works on both a short rest and a long rest. So little bit different there. Okay, here we can see our fighter progression table up to level 8 and some of the abilities. So the next ability up is called Martial Action, and this really has taken the place of fighting styles. So there are some similarities and differences here. So first up is aim, and aim really takes the place of the archery fighting style. Now, it is a bit different, because where archery gives you +2 to all attacks made with ranged weapons, aim works a little differently. It's actually, you have to use a bonus action to use it, and you take time to increase your effectiveness of your next ranged weapon attack. So it's only in your next ranged weapon attack. Kind of like how, what rogues have with their ability, after the Tasha's updated some of their stuff. So you use aim, you select one target you can see. If you make a ranged weapon attack against the target before the end of your next turn, you double your proficiency bonus for the first attack roll. So even at level 1, that's going to be a +4 to attack instead of a +2. Later on, it's going to be a +6 to attack. So it scales nicely. It's not just a +2. It gets progressively better throughout the game, but you can only use it once per turn, on one attack per turn. So it's a trade-off. Next up is Guard. So Guard kind of replaces the protection fighting style. So this is also a bonus action. You raise your shield to intercept incoming attacks. When you use Guard, select one enemy creature within 5 feet of you. The target has disadvantage on the first attack roll it makes against you or an ally within 5 feet of you before the start of your next turn. I don't know how much I like this one. Because with protection, it's a reaction, right? They attack an ally, you use your reaction, you pose disadvantage. So you know it's coming. With this one, on my turn, I have to say, bonus action, I'm going to guard against this guy. If that guy doesn't do anything, it doesn't help. It's a waste, right? So reactions I like because, first off, it's one less bonus action. It lets me free up my action economy a bit. But second, it feels a little more useful. So with this one, like I said, it works again, with you as the target, not just an ally, but you have to pick your target on your turn, use your bonus action to do it. So again, not sure how much I like this one. Quick Strike, this kind of replaces 2 weapon fighting, I suppose. So as a bonus action, you can make a weapon attack with a light melee weapon you're holding. You add your ability modifier to the damage for this attack, as you would with normal weapon attacks. If the light melee weapon has the thrown property, you can choose to throw it for this attack. So this really is your 2 weapon fighting. But what's nice about this is if you look at 2 weapon fighting in 5e, it says when you take the attack action, you can then take an attack with your offhand as a bonus action. This doesn't put that stipulation on. So you can do whatever you want with your action and still use your bonus action to make an attack with a light weapon. It doesn't even have to be your offhand. It can be your main hand. Like if I was to do something, some action, why would I then attack with my offhand, right? I would just attack with my main hand. So I do like this. This to me is a very good fix to some of my issues I've always had with 2 weapon fighting. It also fixes, if you look at, like, let's say, Beastmaster Ranger, and we haven't seen what that looks like in this game yet, but I've always had an issue with the fact that, and especially early on in early levels, before you get your extra attack, if you tell your beast to attack, that's your action, and then you couldn't use your offhand weapon. You couldn't make a second attack. So using your beast to attack before you get extra attack as a Beastmaster was a decrease in damage output. So this fixes that as well. So I really like that. They do a little behind the curtain here to kind of sum that up as well. But this was a very well designed thing, I thought. Wind Up is a little different. I don't know quite if it replaces great weapon fighting or not. It's kind of its own thing. You notice it works with 2-handed weapons or versatile weapons with both hands. So as long as you're using a weapon with 2 hands. So again, it's a bonus action. Notice these are all bonus actions to do. You take the time to increase the effectiveness of your next weapon attack. When you use Wind Up, select one target you can see within 5 feet of you. If you make a melee weapon attack against that target before the end of your turn, you double your proficiency bonus on the first attack. So again, you're adding to your attack bonus with 2-handed weapons, being more accurate, being more precise. So it's cool. Don't know if I like it better than Great Weapon Master or not. I'm not sure about this one. I need to see it at the table. We'll say that. Accent Surge, same as in the book. And then instead of our martial archetype, we have disciplines is what we're going to call it. You'll choose your discipline at 3rd level, just like you would in our any other subclass. And we'll take a look here. Improvements. So this is something I was very interested in the last playtest pack, and we're looking at talents because they made it sound like they were going to give you more time to get talents, and I was like, well, will you get ASIs and talents both, or how is that going to work? And we have our answer now. So when you reach those levels, like 4th and 8th level, you increase one ability score of your choice by 1, and then you choose a talent from which you meet the prerequisites from the martial talent list. So rather than increase by 2 or get a feat, you increase by 1 and get a feat every time. Now, when we get into talents later, you'll see there is a way to get 2 ASIs as opposed to an ASI and a talent, because there's a talent that essentially gives you an ability score increase. So that's kind of cool. So if you notice here too, it says 4th and 8th level fighter feature, so that you get, when you reach 4th and 8th level, you do this. But if you look at the table here, it's also at 6th level, so I think that might just be a typo here on the sheet. It should be 4th, 6th, and 8th. Most classes are probably just 4th and 8th, but fighters do get that extra ASI. So it looks like they'll also get that 6th level improvement. Multi-attack, same as always. On your turn, you can make 2 attacks. Nothing different there. Our first subclass for fighter is the Spellblade. This is essentially the Eldritch Knight reimagined. So you can see here our spell progressions, our cantrips, our spells known, all of that. We have our 3rd level feature, and we have a 7th level feature. So the Spellblade, much like the Eldritch Knight, you'll see a lot of similarities. First thing you're going to notice is when they start talking about spells, they use the word ring. Rings take the place of spell level. So we don't have a 1st level spell. We have a 1st ring spell, a 2nd ring spell. So you'll notice that as well, and we'll get more into that later on in the pack when we actually get into the spellcasting rules and stuff like that. So we go through here, we can see all the spell stuff, essentially exactly the same as Eldritch Knight. The first difference you're going to notice here is the enchant weapon feature. This replaces weapon bond from Eldritch Knight. So basically with the weapon bond, right, you can bond yourself to 2 weapons, you can summon those weapons, they can't be disarmed from those weapons, things like that. This is a little different. This only works with 1 weapon, but it makes it a magical +1 weapon. So kind of cool, kind of neat. It would be nice having that +1 weapon right at level 3. I think that's a cool feature. I always did like the flavor of the being able to summon my weapons and stuff like that. That was one of the things I even liked about the Warlock. When you have the Hexblade, you can summon a weapon. I just think it's a cool, flavorful feature, but yeah, I think I'd rather have a +1 weapon than a weapon I can make vanish and reappear in my hand. Next up is your expanded talent list. So talents, like we said, play a much bigger part in this because we are picking them at those improvement levels or those ASI levels 4, 6, 8 for the fighter. And generally, you're only going to pull from the martial list for a fighter. Every class will have its talent list that it can pull from. But when you choose this subclass, you can also choose from magical talent list. So that's neat as well. So next up is our 7th level ability. This is Spell Multi-Attack. And this is kind of cool because when you use Multi-Attack class feature to make multiple attacks with the attack action, you can replace one of those attacks by casting a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. You can't cast more than 1 cantrip in 1 attack action this way. This basically allows us, if we got, later on, right, fighters end up with multiple multi-attacks, so this allows us to use any one of those to cast a cantrip. Anywhere in that sequence. So that's really neat. This actually replaces the Eldritch Knight's War Magic, which this is definitely a better feature than War Magic because War Magic says that you can use your action to cast a cantrip, and then you can make 1 melee weapon attack as a bonus action. So if you've got like 4 multi-attacks as a fighter, you're giving up a bunch of that to cast a spell. So now you can still do all those attacks plus a cantrip. Much, much nicer. Feels way better. Definitely a little more powerful, but I don't think it's anything game-breaking. I really like it. Okay, so next up is our Weapon Master. This is essentially a replacement of Battle Master. You are going to see some pretty significant differences in how they execute this, though, because we're getting rid of superiority dice with this. So essentially what we have here is we end up with a couple of things. First off, you're a master of weapons. So you choose 3 simple martial weapons with which you have proficiency. You have mastered the use of these 3 weapons. Once per turn, when you roll damage for an attack with a weapon you have mastered, you can re-roll one of the weapon's damage dice and use either result. You can use either result. Notice that you can use either result. You don't have to choose the new one. It's basically you're getting advantage on one of your dice, on one of your damage dice with that weapon. So that's kind of cool. But the big thing here is stunts. Stunts are replacing maneuvers, and basically we just end up with these stunt points as opposed to superiority dice. You don't have to roll dice anymore. Now, in some cases, this works out very well and is very elegant. In other ways, it's a bit of a nerf. So essentially, you end up with a number of stunt points equal to your proficiency bonus plus 1. Superiority dice, you'd have 4 at this point. So you have fewer, but the ways you can use them is kind of nice. And I think that as you level up, you're going to end up with more sooner. Where with superior dice, you get more at level 7. now you're getting them at level 5 because you're going to bring your proficiency bonus up. But the nice thing is, as you get higher and higher level, you end up with more and more, and I think it's going to work out really well. So let's take a look at some of these stunts, right? So let's start with this Arcane Strike. So this is essentially kind of like Sweeping Strikes with some differences. So this is where you're going to see where I think that the stunt points are better than the superiority dice, because this says when you successfully deal damage with a weapon attack, you also deal an additional half that amount of damage to a different target you can see within 5 feet of you. No rolling dice, no calculating, just, hey, I did 12 damage to the one guy and 6 to the other, done, move on. Cost me 1 point to do it, good to go. So sure, maybe I could have done more damage with the superiority dice, maybe not, but this is just a cleaner, elegant, faster way, gets combat movement. I like it. Cheap Shot. This is a pretty, an all new ability. I didn't see a maneuver that I think really mirrored this. So when you successfully hit a target with a melee weapon as part of the attack action, you can immediately make an unarmed strike against the target as part of the same action. I like that. Like, think about like when you're watching a movie and they clash swords and then the guy like takes a cheap shot and just punches him in the face or something like that. It's just a neat little ability. Now, we'll get into how unarmed strikes work differently in this system as opposed to 5e later on, but there's some abilities that would go really well with this. Hobbling Strike. So this is also a new ability. There's not really something like this in 5e. When you successfully hit a creature with a weapon as part of the attack action, you can choose to forego dealing damage with the attack and instead reduce the target's movement speed by half until the beginning of your next turn. So, just think about like cutting their hamstring or something like that. I think that it should still do a little bit of damage, but, whatever. It's a neat ability. Reducing speed can always be useful in certain situations. Make It Count. This is another cool one. So this is another one that's definitely new. When you take the attack action, you can make a single weapon attack with a +10 to the attack roll. You can't make additional attacks as part of this attack action, even if features like multi-attack would normally allow you to do so. So essentially, as a fighter, you give up all your extra attacks, all your multi-attacks, everything, to do one attack with +10 because you need it. You have to make it count. So the way this is worded to me, this also says that, you can make a single weapon attack. So when you take the attack action, you can make a single weapon attack. So you can't get 3 in and then decide to take this. It's got to be the first thing you do. So that costs 1 point to do. And at least the ones that we're seeing here all cost 1 point. Maybe there'll be more later on that'll cost more, because this list is definitely not as big as the maneuvers list. So I would think there's going to be more coming out at some point. Parry is, we have a parry in the in 5e, but this is redesigned. So the 5e parry says when another creature damages you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to expend 1 superiority die to reduce the damage by the number you roll on your superiority die plus your dex modifier. This just says when a creature you see within 5 feet of you hits you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage you take by 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus to a minimum of 0 damage. So again, a little different. Rather than the superiority die, and your dex, it is d10 and proficiency bonus. Seems like a fairly even trade. Just it seems like they're leaning more into proficiency bonuses in this system. So again, it's one I want to see play out the table, but I don't see any issues with it. Let's see. Next up, we see this one here. So I think there was one like this as well. Yeah. So this is another one that is redesigned from 5e. So when a creature you can see within 5 feet of you misses you with a weapon attack, you can use your reaction to immediately make a single weapon attack against that creature. This, I think, might be a little weaker than its counterpart in 5e, which says when a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to expend 1 superiority die to make a melee weapon attack against that creature. If you hit, you add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. So you'd be rolling your d8 and adding that to whatever the attack is, where with this one, you just do an attack. So it is a little bit weaker than its 5e counterpoint. Run through is exactly the same as Arcane Strike, but just for piercing weapons rather than slashing weapons. So you just deal half damage to an additional target. Shifting Strike This one here is sort of new. It's kind of similar to bait and switch, but would be nice if it also had a phrase to not allow opportunity attacks. So basically, when you would successfully hit a creature with a weapon as part of the attack action, you can immediately move to a different unoccupied square within 5 feet of the target. The movement doesn't count against your normal amount of movement allowed in your turn. So it's a free 5 feet of movement. Doesn't count against that, but it would be nice if you could use it to shift out and kind of get a free disengage out of it. But that's what it does. The way it's worded now, how useful is it if you're to move if you're just going to provoke opportunity attacks anyways, other than the free 5 feet of movement? So I don't know about this one. I think that it should not provoke opportunity attack. That's my opinion. Sweep the Leg, I love the name, is straight up reference to the Karate Kid, but it is definitely weaker than Trip is in 5e. So the Trip attack in 5e says, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend 1 superiority die to attempt to knock the target down. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and if the target is larger or smaller, it must make a strength saving throw. On failed save, you knock the target prone. This basically just says, when you successfully hit a creature of no larger than one size category above you with a melee weapon as part of the attack action, you can attempt to knock the target down. The target must make a strength save or fall prone. A little bit weaker because less damage, but essentially same effect. Definitely, less math. It definitely is moving it along. They do say here, we do intend to add even more choices to the stunt list as playtesting continues, so make sure to let us know what kind of weapon-based stunts you want to see in future packets. So that's some feedback they are asking for. What else do you want to see? Overall, pretty good. Some better than 5e, some maybe not as good as 5e. With the way they're giving us a higher starting point buy or array or whatever, you can get a score up to 18 rather than 16 at level 1, and then you're getting these talents as well. This might all balance out pretty well. They might just want to kind of tone certain things down so we're not too OP. The final ability we have for this build is Deadly Flourish. So this takes the place of Know Your Enemy, and I definitely think it's a better ability. Like, Know Your Enemy is cool, kind of gives you some information on them, but let's face it, we want combat abilities, I think, when it comes to this type of thing, especially with a fighter. So this just lets us crit on 19 and 20 as opposed to learning their armor class or learning their strength score or something like that. So I definitely like this better. That is our fighter and our fighter archetypes. So now let's take a look at the wizard. So wizards have always been one of my favorite classes. I like playing them all the way back in the day. It was actually my very first 5e character was a wizard. So I was very excited to see how this all works out. So a few things to note right off the bat. Most everything you see here in this first part up to here is the same, except, and I don't know why they did this, there's no weapon proficiencies. You get a quarterstaff or a dagger, but you're not proficient in them. At least wizards in 5e do have certain weapon proficiencies that they can use. I mean, if all else fails, attack with a quarterstaff, attack with a dagger. I mean, I can think of very rare occasions where I've ever attacked with a weapon with my wizard, but it'd be nice if he's proficient in his own staff, So that's something I would like to see them add back in. It's just those few minor weapon proficiencies. As we move forward, again, let's take a look here. So first level wizard feature. As a student of arcane magic, you have a spell book containing spells that show the first glimmerings of your true power. We have cantrips and all that. We talk about your spell book and preparing it. Basically the same stuff. I want to stop, though, and talk about ritual casting, because this is a big change in this system from 5e. So as a wizard, you have access to a special type of long-form spells called rituals. You do not need to prepare ritual spells to cast them, and they do not expend a spell slot when cast. Okay, so far the same. At first level, you choose 2 rituals of your choice from the Arcane Circle ritual list. You learn additional arcane rituals of your choice at higher levels, as shown in the known rituals column of the wizard progression table. Each ritual spell you learn must be of a ring for which you have spell slots as known on the wizard progression table. Rituals you learn do not count against the number of spells you learn at each level. So if we go back here, known cantrips, known rituals. Rituals are now their own thing, similar to cantrips. You can no longer cast a ritual using a spell slot and cast it quicker. A ritual is a ritual. You have a ritual book, and it takes a certain amount of time. Certain spells that were rituals, however, and we'll see this later, are no longer rituals. But those that are can only be cast as rituals. So that is a new thing. So what's nice though is when you get your 6 spells at level 1, you also get a ritual at level 1. If you want Find Familiar, you can have Find Familiar as your ritual and still 6 other spells plus your 3 cantrips. So I do like that part. I think it's a neat design, and I'm looking forward to it. All right, next up is Arcane Recovery. Really no difference from 5e on this. Same thing that you have in 5e. It's a great ability. Wizards love it. We need it. Now, here's a big difference. Notice you're getting your Arcane Tradition at 3rd level, not 2nd level. But we have a new ability at 2nd level that I really like. This is called Magic Sense. And essentially it lets you kind of use an ability. It's almost like how certain classes can, sense evil or something like that. Well, you can sense magic. So your growing field experience allows you to perceive nearby magical workings. As an action, you can open your awareness to detect magical forces. Until the end of your turn, you know the location of any creature with the ability to cast spells, ongoing spell effects, or magic items within 30 feet of you. If the magical effect is the result of ongoing spells, you learn which school of magic the spell belongs to. The sense can penetrate most barriers, but it is blocked by 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead, and 3 feet of wood or dirt. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus plus 1. When you finish a long rest, you regain all expended uses. So this is very similar to Detect Magic, but I know that when I've played, and we're in a room, the wizard might ask, do I sense any kind of magic or anything like that? I'm like, roll an arcane check. Because there's not really a mechanic for that. But it feels like there should be. So we do that. Magic Sense kind of stepped in and taken the place of that and given a real rule behind it, which I really like. Detect Magic is still a spell, but Detect Magic is no longer a ritual. And this is why, because I feel like this balances that out. So at least for the Arcane Circle, it's not. I haven't looked to see if it's a ritual for others, but in the Arcane Circle, it's not. And if you don't remember from Playtest Packet 1, there are 4 types of circles now. There you have, so rather than a wizard spell list and a sorcerer spell list and a bard spell list, there's just these 4 circles. So we'll look at them later, but right now we're looking at the Arcane Circle and the spells within that. So this Magic Sensibility is a new ability we get at level 2 because we're not getting our subclass at level 2. We're getting our subclass at level 3. Now this was something that D&D Beyond was doing as well, and I was not a fan of it. But I do like the way that Kobold Press is executing it here. It feels okay to me here. I want to see what it looks like with clerics, because clerics generally get theirs at level 1. So I want to see if they're doing that with clerics as well. But you'll notice too that in 5th edition, wizards get an ability at 6th level. So they get their Arcane Tradition at 2nd level, and then they get a feature at 6th level. Now they're getting their Arcane Tradition at 3rd level, and they get that next feature at 7th level instead of 6th level. So we'll take a look at that when we get into the subclasses. But we do have our Arcane Tradition, and then we have our improvement, our ASI, which is going to come from the magical talents. So you'll get one ability score by 1, and then a talent. And I'm wondering if it might be smart at level 1 to essentially put your primary score at 17, so when you hit 4th level, you have that 18. I mean, you could start it at 18 if you really wanted to, but you might end up with a better spread of point scores if you do a 17 and then bump it to 18 at 4th level. That might be the smart way to do that. And when I start play testing, I'm going to play with that and see how that works out. Okay, let's dive into our Arcane Traditions. So first one we have is Battle Mage. I like this one. This, I think, is going to be a go-to for a lot of people because a lot of people play D&D as more of a combat-oriented game, and this is the mage to do that. So first off, we get an expanded talent list. Because we're a battle mage, we can also choose for martial talents, not just magical talents. Then we get the Spell Ward. Spell Ward is neat because it kind of reminds me of a Barbarian's Rage. You can redirect a portion of your spellcasting energy into a defensive shield. So when you cast an arcane spell of first ring, which again, rings are levels, so first ring or higher, you can simultaneously weave a protective ward around yourself. While the ward is active, you gain the following benefits if you aren't wearing medium or heavy armor. You gain a bonus to your AC equal to your proficiency bonus, and you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. So it's like a miniature, shield or mage armor kind of thing that you're putting around yourself. Now this lasts for 1 minute, but it ends early if you're knocked unconscious or if your turn ends and you haven't cast a spell of the first ring or higher since your last turn. So you have to continue to cast spells and use spell slots, just like a barbarian has to continue to attack or take damage in order to maintain his rate. Very neat idea. And I think without this, having to continuously cast and feed that energy to the shield, it might have been an overpowered ability, but I really like how they designed this. So you get this feature number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain uses on a long rest. Well done. I like it. It's neat. Next up is Tactical Caster. This is very much like Spell Sculpt for the Evocation Wizard. Essentially, when you cast a spell that deals damage, you can choose yourself and any number of allies you could see to be immune to the damage caused by the spell. So that's nice. I like that just any number because some people do play with larger parties. So it just lets you say, all my friends are safe. So I like that. Next up is this ability called Contingency Plan. And this is another one I really like because wizards, we don't get multi-attack, right? We don't get to do much on our turns. We wait and we wait and we wait and we cast a spell and it's like, you missed. Okay, I'm done. Like, that's it. Like, you don't have a huge action economy as a wizard. You might have a bonus action here or there, but really, you're generally doing one thing on your turn. And if you miss, it just sucks after waiting 10 or 15 minutes. So Contingency Plan gives you kind of a second chance at success on your turn. So basically, when you fail to hit a creature with a spell attack, you can use your reaction to attempt to redirect the spell toward a different target within the spell's range. You must make a new spell attack roll for the new target. I like that, man. Like, even if it's just a firebolt or something like that, and you miss, you can use your reaction and try to hit somebody else with that firebolt. You roll another attack. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but at least you didn't just wait 10 minutes for your turn to cast one spell and nothing happens. So really, really like that. I almost want that for all wizards, honestly. That's a really cool feature. Okay, next up is our other subclass for wizards. This is the Cantrip Adept. And I'm glad they did this. They actually note it here in this behind the curtain part as well, because this is a subclass that was featured in their recent book, Tome of Heroes, which is a 5th edition book. But they put this in here to show you how you could take a 5th edition subclass and turn it into a subclass for the core fantasy role-playing system. So let's take a look. The first two abilities, Arcane Elasticity, I can't say that word, don't make fun of me, and this Cantrip Polymath, both these abilities are exactly the same as they appeared in Tome of Heroes. However, they're 3rd level instead of 2nd level because that's when you get this your subclass. So that's the only difference there. The next ability here is the Potent Spellcasting, and this one we get at 7th level rather than 6th level. So that's one difference from the Tome of Heroes. The other difference is that you add your proficiency bonus to one damage roll. In Tome of Heroes, it was that you added your intelligence bonus. By the time you're 7th level, that intelligence bonus generally for most people was going to be a +4, but here it's only going to be a +3. So this is a slight power down again. Now, when we combine that with other things that we have from talents and stuff, maybe it's not. But if we take that out, we just look at the raw ability by itself, it is a slight power down. I don't know yet if that's a bad thing or not. But we get to see right here how we just took a 5th edition subclass and made it into a Project Black Flag subclass. So well done. Really cool. I'm glad they added that. Next up is our talent section. So there's a couple of new talents that we're going to see here, and there's going to be a couple of talents that they have updated from Playtest Packet 1. So let's take a look here. The first one being Mental Fortitude. So this one has updated a little bit. We can see here that now they specify that you must declare your intention to re-roll after you've learned you're failed, but before the GM has resolved the consequences of the roll. So they even say here, a lot of you focused on confusing language of the first bullet point of this talent in your playtest feedback, so we wanted to re-include it here in hopes of providing clarification. The intention of the sentence is to make it clear that a player must use the feature immediately after learning they failed the roll, but before the GM does all the work of illustrating what a failed roll means in the game. It is our hope that this inclusion trains players to stay aware of their abilities so the GM isn't put in the tough spot of calculating full damage, reading off a long description, walking through the full consequences of narrative failure, etc., to then have to take it back when a player suddenly remembers that they can use this feature after the fact. So they're just trying to encourage players to be aware of their abilities, and it works. They also made a slight change here as well. If you are affected by ongoing spell effects of magical effect that targets only you, not an area of effect, due to failing an int, whiz, or charisma save, you can repeat the save at the end of each of your turns, ending the effect on success, even if the ongoing magical effects would not typically allow you to do so. In the original, it did not specify that this only worked on single target, non-area effect spells. So basically, they're saying that here now. So just a little more clarity. If you remember earlier when we were looking at the ASIs and the talents, I said there is a way to get your 2 ASI points instead. This is it right here, mental prowess, and there's a martial version of this as well. But essentially, you can just add one score to either charisma, intelligence, or wisdom. So if you just want to bump your intelligence by 2, you take this instead of any of the other talents. Okay, so next up is Ritualist. This is kind of cool. So because the way they kind of broke out rituals into this whole new kind of spell in the system, what this allows you to do is to get a ritual book that's separate from your other one. Like at least if you're a wizard, right, you have ritual spells. But let's say I'm a wizard, I generally only use arcane magic spells. Now the 4 circles are arcane, divine, primordial, and weird. And as a wizard, I would generally have arcane, but I could choose this talent and say I want to get primordial rituals now, and I'd have a new book of primordial rituals. I would get 1 for each level of spell rings I currently have, even as a wizard. So if I can cast up to third ring or 3rd level spells, I would get 1 primordial ritual of 1st ring, 1 of 2nd ring, and 1 of 3rd ring in this new book, and I can cast those. And as I level up as a wizard and I gain new access to new spell rings or spell levels, I would also get a new primordial ritual in this book. So it basically is a way to kind of tap into some other circles of magic that you might not normally have access to and get rituals for those. I really like it. It's neat. Ritual. I like what they did with ritual casting in the system in general. It definitely has a really cool feel to it. So this is a neat talent. Next up is School Specialization. We saw this one in the last playtest packet. Really, the only thing they did was they added this disclaimer saying that you can't select the talent, or you can select the talent multiple times, but you must choose a different school of magic each time, so it can't stack. So this is a kind of neat one because whenever you cast a spell from the school that you chose, it requires you to make an attack roll. You add +1. Whenever you cast a spell from the school that requires a target to make a save versus your spell's save DC, the DC increases by 1. And if you use a spellbook to cast your spells, the golden time you must spend copying a spell of that school into your spellbook is halved. So I like this a lot, this School Specialization. I think that most casters, at least most wizards, would probably end up liking this one a lot. Especially someone like the battle mage that we looked at earlier. Let's say they're heavily into evocation magic, which makes sense. This would be a great talent to take. It's definitely a well-designed talent. Next up are our martial talents. We only have a couple here, but the artillerist is a new one that basically has to do with siege weapons. It does seem cool. I like the idea, but it's so rare I ever use ballista or something like that in my games. It's like those rare occasions where they show up. I don't know how much use this talent will really see in game. I mean, I get it. It's a good one to have there, but it's definitely gonna be one of those, I think, lesser used talents. Hand to hand. This one's neat. We talked earlier about when we were looking at the fighter subclass, and I talked about the cheap shot punch, how hand-to-hand combat is a little different. This is what I'm talking about. So through the regular practice in wrestling, boxing, engaging in some other form of martial arts, you have mastered techniques that allow you to efficiently fight without the use of weapons. You gain the following benefits. You are proficient with your unarmed strikes. Your unarmed strikes deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength, and you have advantage in ability checks made to initiate or escape a grapple. Now, right here they talk about behind the curtain. Characters created using core fantasy role-playing are not automatically proficient with unarmed strikes, which is a deviation from the 5th edition rules. This change has a variety of mechanical implications, like giving greater value to selecting a talent like hand-to-hand, but ultimately the change was made for narrative reasons. After all, how many people do you know that can throw a great punch with zero instruction or training? A character without proficiency in unarmed strikes no longer gets to add their proficiency bonus when they make melee attack rolls with an unarmed strike. If you are not proficient with unarmed strikes, a successful attack with an unarmed strike still deals bludgeoning damage equal to 1 plus your strength modifier. This is definitely, like I said, a big deviation. I would hope to see some kind of unarmed fighting style or something like that as well. I know we don't do the fighting styles anymore, but I would hope to see something that allows for people to build out a more of a a hand-to-hand type of combatant. I mean, I guess you could probably take this at level 1 and build out your character that way, but again, this is stuff that we need to see maybe some more of the, like when we actually get the combat rules section of this system. I think it'll answer a few more questions. The next one up here is physical prowess. So this is basically the physical version of the magical one that we looked at earlier that allows you to get an extra 1 in your ability score increase. So if you want to get that +2 bonus when you hit level 4, you dump 1 to strength, and then you grab this one, you dump another 1 to strength, your strength is up by 2. So simple, sweet, it works. I like it. The last talent of the day is in the technical talent tree, and it is Touch of Luck, and this is really designed to work with this new luck system. So let's take a look at this one, because this says you have cultivated a knack for making the best of a bad situation, and fortune's favor always makes its way back to you. You gain the following benefits. Whenever you would gain a luck point as a result of failing an attack roll or save, you instead gain 2 luck points. If you have 5 luck points and would gain a 6th point, your luck point total resets to 1d4 plus 1. So normally it would only be 1d4. You get an extra 1 here. So you could end up with a full 5 still. But regardless, you're going to end up with a minimum of 2. So that it's just a nice talent that works with this new fail forward system. They also include another behind the curtain here that says, while we understand you won't be able to select the Touch of Luck talent if you are strictly using the content presented in this packet, we still wanted to share it with you to preview how we're thinking about the future options that could interact with the new luck mechanic. Basically saying that the fighter and the wizard don't use technical talents, but they just wanted to show it to us because it's part of this new luck system. Okay, so the last part of this packet is going to dig into spellcasting. So we kind of have our spellcasting rules here. They are going to be referencing spells that are in the SRD 5.1. However, there will be a few of those spells which they will actually put the full version of the spell in this packet if it's changed from the SRD. But let's take a look here at a few of the differences. I'm not going to read through everything, but the first thing you're going to see here is the rings. So rather than spell levels, think of it as the rings of a tree. You start off in the center, and as your magic grows, your power grows outward, you're able to access more and more powerful spells. So when we talk about rings of magic, that's what they're talking about is spell levels. Then we also have the other reason the rings kind of work is it kind of coincides with the arcane circles, right? The circles being, arcane, weird, divine, and primordial. So it all kind of narratively works really cool together. They talk about each of the circles here, but arcane is basically like wizards and sorcerers are going to use. They describe it here as the arcane circle of magic draws its power from the manipulation of measurable forces that govern material reality, including forces like heat, space, and gravity. So I think you kind of get the idea of how that works. Divine obviously is going to be more of your divine stuff, your healing, and you're bringing people back from the dead, and your smites and stuff like that. The primordial is going to be more of your nature magic, summoning beast and plant-based spells and things like that. And then your weird circle, to me, sounds more like kind of your warlock stuff. You're summoning demons, you're going to other planes of existence, things like that. Sounds a little bit more warlock-esque to me. Again, we talk about the spell rings and spell slots here, which I think by now we've kind of gone over. They talk about our schools of magic. There's nothing really majorly different here from 5e. They talk about how known spells work and stuff like that. A little bit more talk about how rituals work. But I think I've kind of given you a good idea of how that works. But I do want to touch on this behind the curtain here. Ritual spells have been altered from the way they appeared in 5th edition to clarify how and when they should be used. By placing spells with longer casting times into a separate category, we're emphasizing that ritual spells are not meant to be used in combat and encouraging players to think of them as tools to aid with exploration and social encounters. So they're just basically talking about how, now rituals are their own thing. You can't cast, certain spells like identify. You can't just cast identify. It is just a ritual now. So you have to cast it as a ritual. And it makes sense. And it works out. And like I said, it gives you more spells. It gives you access to more spells the way they design it. And I like all that. Going through here, they're just talking about the different aspects of a spell. What's casting time? What's a range? What's, area of effect? And, all that stuff. So we can kind of skip over that. It's, the same. Components, the same. Concentration works exactly the same. So that's all good stuff. And then we can see our spell list here. Now, this basically mimics like the wizard spell list almost identically, with a few exceptions because there are a few other spells that maybe weren't on the wizards but are on another spell list. But for the most part, it does. You can see here a few asterisks. That's because those spells have changed a little bit from 5th edition, and I'm going to show them here. If we look at arcane rituals, here's your arcane ritual list. These are all the ritual spells in the arcane circle. You'll notice comprehend language and detect magic are not on this list. They are no longer ritual spells. So you have to use them as spell slots now. But these other spells you can gain and they don't count against your normal spell total, which I like. You also see Mage Armor here. Mage Armor has changed a little bit because now, as opposed to saying that it's the AC of 13 plus your dex, it's just providing a flat +3 bonus to your AC as long as you're not wearing armor. So to me, that says it can stack with other things as long as it's not armor. So it's definitely a cleaner way of doing Mage Armor. They include Magic Missile here. I'm not really sure why. Like, they worded it a little differently, but the effect is exactly the same unless I'm missing something. But yeah, I mean, here's Magic Missile. Maybe they just did to kind of show us how a spell from the SRD that hasn't changed would look coming into this system. But yeah. Finally, the last thing they give us is an example of a ritual spell. So we can see here the create familiar as opposed to find familiar spell. We can see what the casting time is. We can see what the components are. It gives us a full description. So they just wanted to give us an example of how a ritual spell will look in this system. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing all these spells fleshed out. I can't wait to see a final product of like all the spells and the combat rules especially. I think will give us a little more clarity on how all this works. But for the most part, this was a big packet, guys. This was a 19-page packet, and they gave us a lot of stuff in here. So that is it for Playtest Packet 2 for Project Black Flag this week. Let me know what you think of this playtest packet. I know a lot of people were not big fans of a lot of this stuff in the first playtest packet, but I think that was more not because it was badly done, but because they were hoping that Project Black Flag was going to be a bigger departure from 5e. So let's keep in mind that this is supposed to be a system that is completely compatible with 5th edition with some minor changes. You'll notice that they said, even with the luck system, they said don't use inspiration and luck. Use inspiration or luck. So you can still, if you don't like luck, you can still just use inspiration. But they're building this out to be compatible. If you wanted to, you could still play an evocation wizard in this system. You just need to make a couple adjustments, and they showed us how to make those adjustments with the cantrip adding to basically get your subclass at level 3, make a couple minor adjustments. You bump your level 6 ability up to 7. You just make those changes. So overall, I really like what I'm starting to see, how this is all taking shape. I can see how I can continue to use all my 5th edition material with this, especially my class stuff. That to me was a big deal because I do have a lot of, third-party books and even, Wizard of the Coast books that will still work really well with this system. I've invested a lot of money into those. I want to keep using them. And I'm liking what I'm seeing. I definitely think I like the luck system. The more I think about it, the more I like it. I'm really looking forward to trying that at the table. I might actually try that out this weekend at the table. I'll let you know how that goes. But yeah, for the most part, I think it's looking solid. Definitely a few things I felt like maybe were a little weaker, but I'm going to play test it all before I make judgments on that stuff. So let me know in the comments below what you think of Playtest Packet 2, especially in the context of Project Black Flag being a 5th edition adjacent system that's supposed to be fully compatible and not a departure from 5th edition. Because I think that's important. You know, we have to judge it on what it's meant to be and not what maybe you hoped it would be. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Very curious. I will hope to do another live where we can maybe build some characters and do all that together. So that's it for today, guys. And until next time, raise those flags.